Folks, it's great to have you here. Lawrence, it's great to see you again. And as always, we always appreciate all of our listeners. It's Easter, folks, and I hope you've had some time to enjoy your connection with your family and continue to strengthen your relationship with our community. Big shout out to the fact that it's National Volunteer Week, Lawrence. I like to think that we're a bit of the volunteers within our community when it comes to sharing the Squeaky Wheel message. And you may be unaware of this, but it's also National Canine Fitness. I think that's actually for the month. So, folks, make sure you get your dogs out there, get them up and down those hills, and let them pull you around. Lawrence, let's jump into a whole bunch of things we can have conversations with about the province. Native hockey provincials occurred from March 31st to April 3rd. And I know we had talked a little bit about it, but now the exciting stories of who finished in that series. Under the Under 13 M&A Voyageurs, the Dumont group finished silver. The Voyageurs, the Riel team, made it to the quarterfinals. Under 15th Voyageurs girls were in fourth place, and the M&A Voyageurs boys managed to capture gold. So big shout out to all those teams, and so excited that we have these provincial native hockey games.
Yeah, I think we've only been participating, I think, for a little bit here. I think maybe prior, but as an M&A, we've never really had teams in. But I think we started with one about. It must have been about 4 years ago. Now we have 3 and even a girls team. So, yeah, we're pretty excited about that. And for them to show up and win. It's great.
Yeah. Hey, anytime you can play hockey, as I say all the time, I would rather spend an hour on the ice than 10 minutes on a treadmill, right? Because when you're out there in a team and you're out there passing that puck around, it doesn't feel like work.
Unless you're on the bench. Unless you're on the bench for an hour.
That's true. But hey, if I'm passing out the bottles, I'm passing those water bottles out with fervor. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's staying hydrated.
Yeah, but if it wasn't for your fireman buddy who slew-footed me and I hit my butt and hurt myself, I'd probably be playing more with you guys. But
I think he was 16 feet away from you when you somehow managed to fall to the ground. But yes, I do remember that. A strong pass might have knocked you over. Folks, as always, you're listening to the Captain, Ross Pambrun, and you're listening to the President, Lawrence Gervais. And I know the beautiful music of Alex Kusteruk brings us in, and Devin behind the scenes, and Leighton behind the scenes who helped put us together. For those of you who aren't watching our podcast and are just listening online, Lawrence, again, is wearing just a fabulous black vest that seems to hold his character in check.
That's City of Lethbridge, yeah. So if you're a city out there and you want me to wear your swag, please send it over.
You heard it here, folks. The fingers up, folks. If you want us to wear your swag, it never hurts to fire it our way. I do have my little Ukraine pin here on. And again, all of our thoughts always go to the families and the thank you to all of our community in Canada who's connecting with the Ukraine, the families, the population. And, our country's doing some fabulous things when it comes to there's, from what I understand, if there's any families whose children are facing or suffering from cancer treatment, they're being brought here in order to try and continue those treatments. So our thoughts are always, our prayers are going out to the Ukrainian families.
This episode brought to you by the Métis Nation of Alberta, with a vision of a strong Métis Nation embracing Métis rights, and a mission to pursue the advancement of the socioeconomic and cultural well-being of the Métis people of Alberta. For more information, go to www.albertamétis.com. Now, back to the show.
I was looking at my notes, and Lawrence, I had to try and catch up on really what it might have said, because it said Métis dates. I thought to myself, is this what we're doing? Are we all of a sudden the Tinder of the Métis community? But actually, what I think I was referring to is during the month of April, the M&A seems to go around the province to different areas and is creating the opportunity for, if you have an awareness of Métis genealogy, this is your opportunity to go and connect and do some of the work in order to find citizenship.
Well, basically register. That's what it is. Registry is coming into all these cities. They do it, I think, maybe twice a year. So now they're sort of coming to different sort of areas. And Region 3, they hit like the Red Deer, Airdrie, the high populations, Calgary, of course, but they sometimes venture out into the unknown too to try to connect to Métis people. But it's what they have to do, right? It's in their mandate.
Oh, yeah, and to get people to come in and folks, albertamétis.com. I get a lot of information from there. If you sort of register in order to get emails, they send you just great information about whether it's wellness programs, whether it's youth programs, opportunities for elders, arts, business. One of the other ones I was reading about was the Métis Family Resource Program. So there's different ways in order to connect with, whether it comes down to education, whether it comes down to support for, the unique challenges that families face, whether it's the support for mental health, resiliency, or counseling. And there's also one I was reading about, Lawrence, the Reaching Home program, where they strive to support individuals who are either looking to find sustainable living conditions or living places to live, or ways to, create, a slightly better living environment for themselves, or even supporting some internal or home building construction. Like they're always trying to find a way in order to support some of the programs when it comes to keeping people in their homes. Yeah.
I think BC, from what I knew when I worked there at the Friendship Centers, was, they had these people called roots workers, and they were people that, who go after the most vulnerable populations, but also ensure that they got their registry, whether their status First Nations or status Métis, and they would go through that whole process with them too, as a part of it, because they're reconnecting to the families as well as finding them housing and giving them all those supports too. So I haven't really seen that too much here in Alberta, and that's just a comment, but maybe it's not being offered. But I really firm believe, like, the whole person, when you really want to take them out of those environments, just give them as much as you can, right?
That's a good point, because not everything sticks with everybody. And if you can find different programs that, by offering these to individuals or families, if you can find different programs, hopefully they're going to help break the cycle of where people find they get trapped in this loop of a challenge and can't seem to break out of it.
Yeah, and identity is a major cause for them not knowing who they are. So they end up just in this rut. They can't get out. But once you start to learn about yourself, your culture, who you are, where you come from, sometimes that person just starts to develop, right?
Well, and that seems like a very common thread within the Indigenous community. And again, as people are continuing to learn more about residential schools and how a certain allowance to have culture was beaten out of you, was removed, and the opportunity to share and connect was removed, now we're starting to find it again, and people are hesitant. But I think that they're starting to realize that you can't deny who you are. You shouldn't deny who you are, and you need to start to embrace it.
Yeah, and sometimes people just don't know. Like, if they went through foster care or they've been adopted, imagine trying to ask questions to your social worker, who am I? And they probably go, it's not written here, so I don't know, right?
Yeah, so, that's actually a really good point. Yeah. A lot of times the role of those individuals is to try and guide you. They don't have all the information, but at least they try to guide you. You're right. When all of a sudden you say, well, really, who are the Métis? Yeah, they need to be taught just as much as you need to be taught about who the Métis and who they are and their relationship with Canada and the Indigenous community. And that speaks volumes to the wellness initiatives that the MNA are creating. So folks, albertamétis.com, again, I can't say it enough. If you reach out and ask for the programs, they're going to answer the call, just like we're trying to work to share that information. And in fact, I was just reading Region 2 families have a fun opportunity. There's a program called Save the Children. It's generously donated art-based mental health kits to all Region 2 citizens aged between 5 and 14. So for all of you 5 to 14-year-olds who are listening to our program right now, which probably represents a pretty low population, but folks, if you have 5 to 14-year-olds out there, or if you want something like this in your region, make sure you reach out to the M&A community. Reach out to us. We'd love to share that. But in this, each art kit comes with they call it the Art Mental Health Kit. Markers, pencils, crayons, different beads, strings, scissors, coloring books, and tote bags. And it's just one more opportunity where I know they're going to provide you some of the resources so you can get your hands busy, get your mind busy, and learn about those techniques that, have always been a shared art within the Métis community.
Yeah, and I think that's offered to all the regions. In Region 3, we got our big boxes full of those kits. So they are available.
Folks, make sure you reach out to all the regions because they're everywhere.
So not just Region 2, but...
I'll have to look into our office and see where they are. Yeah, no, I think that's fabulous. You're probably right, Lawrence. This is something that I overlooked. This is just...
the person we talked to is Kristen Acuna, and she can set people up with those kits if you have a question. So 403-569-8800 is our Region 3 number. Or just Google
Lawrence.
Métis and
who calls
Calgary.
us? Yeah, Métis3.org, folks. You look us up. You'll find little pictures of Lawrence and I, and there's information about the programs that are available. And yes, Kristen Acuna, who runs the youth program, I know she would love to hear and continue to support something like that. And another fun thing I was reading about was this was down in Halifax, Lawrence, and maybe I know that there are camps that happen when it comes to exposure in the fire department, exposure in the police department, and for cadets and such. But this one is a first responders camp for Indigenous teens. Now, it was coming out of CBC Halifax. I think it's such a great way to introduce teens into the experience of the challenges that are faced for first responders. But in this case, they were really trying to focus on Indigenous teen girls. You know, here's an underrepresented population when it comes to exploring what may be challenging and dangerous roles, but everybody should have the right to explore it to determine whether or not this is the direction that they want to go.
Yeah, I mean, career placement is fantastic, especially when they can immerse them at that age, when they're in their teens, when they're sort of figuring things out. But there's plenty of opportunity for Indigenous, recruiting in all areas now. Your dad always promotes Bold Eagle, which is certainly up here in Alberta for the Army, but, Indigenous teens getting into these places, I think is vital, and especially at camp, I think it's great.
That's true. The Bald Eagle program is a really strong advocate. It's as much as it's sort of based around that cadet program, the military cadet program. I think if anything, it just teaches you the respect. It teaches you the necessity to have integrity, how to develop strength, how to work as a team, and then how to build on your leadership skills. So yeah, that's definitely one you want to look into. It provides an opportunity for a safe place, as it were, to, safe place in the sense of, well, you're still going to be working hard. You're still going to be challenged. But they even provide opportunities for educational funding afterwards. So, when you look into these programs, you realize that every program is geared to maybe a different subset of skills. But if you can get involved in them, the opportunities that come out of it. And Lawrence, even within our own office, right? You've often created many opportunities for youth or for elders to be more involved in connecting with our community. And maybe not always in the sense of that you're looking for long-term full-time employment, but how often do we bring in students in order to, have a role within our community? Might even be things like just participating in the bingos.
Yeah, but I think students is vital. Rupert's Land always has a pretty good format for, what they give us every year. They'll pay their portion of their salary and we'll take care of the rest type thing. But we'll get some really key students at least from May till August, right? In the community. So
yeah, and this is exactly where they have to be at the opportunity to connect with our citizens. And hopefully, again, the guidance of our elders, our seniors, and our knowledge keepers are what continue to share and then spread that awareness. I was reading an interesting story. Prince Albert recently, I think it was about a week ago, lost the Allen Bird Memorial Center. Now, it burned down. I don't know if I've read about if it was suspicious or not, but it creates a conflict with residential school survivors. This building has been around for 60 years, but during that period of time, it was, as the residential schools were, in place, it was used as a drill hall. So, youth were brought there, and the expectation was, again, that you would sort of follow the rules and be very engaged in understanding how there was a hierarchy. But it's played such a role in the community. So, again, this extends back to we shouldn't ignore the residential conversation. We should always be looking for how it impacts our community, because we need to continue to strive to have a better understanding of how, colonialism affected the Indigenous students, in fact, affected the Indigenous families when it came to all of a sudden being taken from your family and forced to go to a residential school. And yet, places like this community center have also served such a strong, positive purpose. How do we find and continue to find strength as we move forward and build on our strengths?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty interesting topic. I don't think this will be the last time we hear of things like this happening, with churches and those significant places, historical places. There's, we understand, the Pope's apology and what that actually means to people. And people are 50-50 on it. Some of them don't really care, that went through that experience. Some, obviously, they think it's a step forward. But, in the Pope's apology, he never mentioned the grave sites. There's certain things that he didn't mention that people are certain commenting on. Yeah, he apologized, but yeah, he apologized for the church's role, but in what? Like, there has to be a list after that sentence, right? And that would probably appeal to many of the people who had severe trauma in these places, right? And they still carry that hatred no matter what.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's going to take a long time for the healing to happen. It's not going to be overnight. And it certainly may not happen with the Pope apology. And even a Pope visit, it may not happen there. Those are symbolic, but that's all they are. The work has to be done.
You're right. The work does have to be done. And maybe that's one of the responsibilities of when he comes here, is to see these sites and go, wow, here was a beautiful school that was built, but now it was desecrated by the abuse that was occurring, in these situations. And, in context, if you don't visit a place, if you don't allow the land, allow that awareness to happen, I think sometimes it's easier just to try and turn a blind eye. And, again, speaking on the point that we can't let it go by the wayside. We need to continue to find a way to heal, and we need to find a way to let that hatred go. Yeah. Because that hatred just never builds on strength.
Absolutely. And, working, that's why elders are so vital in all of this, because they can carry those messages and make people really sit and think through their teachings, right? And that's really important process to have in our Indigenous communities.
Well, and speaking of Indigenous communities, and when I read this news sort of tagline, I immediately thought to myself, I'm like, Lawrence is stepping down from the squeaky wheel. Folks, what it said was a longtime radio host whose voice has connected Métis citizens. But then I read a little further and it said across Manitoba. And I'm like, whew. Folks, those who can't see it, I'm wiping my brow because I was so nervous that Lawrence was retiring from the squeaky wheel. But no, this is Ray St Germain, 82 years old, from St Vital, Manitoba, has been hosting the call-in show. Actually, I'm not even too sure if I know what the name of it is, but he's been hosting the Métis call-in show from Winnipeg for 23 years. Well-respected country music singer, songwriter, who's performed alongside the likes of, I don't know if you know this individual, Johnny Cash. He's played alongside just another guy who's been in the occasional music industry called Kenny Rogers, and was inducted into the Canadian Country Music Hall of Fame in 2010. So at 82 years old, I guess he's done his part in order to share in communication with the community. Lawrence, I think we're almost at 80 episodes. Yeah. How many episodes are we going to be at when we get to 23 years?
Oh my God, we'll be old. Really old. Well, 69 I'll be. But
there's a good chance I'll look the same that I do now, right? Because I don't seem to age. I think most people have said, I look about 35 and I don't look a day over that. But yeah, Lawrence, if we did 100 episodes a year times 23 years, there's no way you could do the math. No. I mean, technically the math can't even be done. Like the number would be astronomical.
No, I mean, I have to get up. I gotta
just randomly.
Yeah, and there's a process. You got to set up your camera, set up your lights. I got to hit record. You got to point the thing correctly. Yeah, and then You got people who are in the wings telling us that you did things wrong every week and do this properly. Yeah, it would be terrible having to do that until you're 82. But I think all the power to Ray. Ray's a bit of a celebrity in our Métis community, and we wish him a lot of wellness, and hopefully gets back on that stage again. But I've had the opportunity to see him a few times, growing up, and he's a heavy entertainer. He's fantastic, but yeah, it's too bad that he's
squeaky
retiring.
wheel. Yeah, maybe they're looking for us to take his place.
Maybe
Lawrence,
he'll come onto our program, and show us how it's done.
That's right. 22 years from now, I would imagine we won't be filmed. We will just think our thoughts, and everything will be recorded.
It'll be AI.
And it'd be like some Star Trek idea where everything, or I don't even know what I'm thinking, and they're just taking the information out of my brain and sending it out. I do not want to see what's in that brain, Lawrence, of yours. So, folks, if you've come up with the technology to read Lawrence's brain, do not bring it here. I think we would put us all at peril.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because artificial intelligence is now doing podcasts.
Well, artificial intelligence has been songwriting for a while too. Yeah, I mean, they're grabbing on to the natural language processing. So yes, thank you for pointing out, Lawrence, that I'm completing my studies at MIT for artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is not necessarily what you're doing, but I'm giving myself a little pat on the back. But yes, this is what they're doing, is they're taking all of the best songs, all of the best sort of order of songs, but the computers don't understand the emotion behind it. They find the words and are putting them in place. And same in a sense with podcasting or reading news headlines.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they are challenged with is, if I was to say, Lawrence broke his iPhone, it's not working. The computer doesn't really know what "it's" means. It only knows iPhone. And if I was to say Lawrence broke his iPhone does not work, the computer would understand that, but it isn't able to process that. So this is the reason songwriters like myself hopefully will still have a job. But yes, I would imagine, Lawrence, by the time 22 years comes by, we'll be much very more entrenched in our roles.
And if I were you, I'd be very careful not to speak against AI, especially now. Because now we're going to leave the podcast. You're going to be logged out of everything, right? It's just going to take over your computer and your life.
Exactly. They're already after me. Lawrence, we're going to have to start wearing tinfoil hats on our show.
Yeah, it's going to let all the spam come through, onto your computer.
That's right. Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are starting to send their spam, I bet you, to us. Summerland in BC has an indigenous garden. I think it's the first in Canada. This includes plants that are local to the area, as well as indigenous used plants. So things like choke cherries, soapberries, Oregon grapes, fireweed, which I always think I liked fireweed because it's kind of got that nice red and orange tinge to it. Rabbit brush, which I'm going to have to read a little bit more about. But they're looking at trying to, because if that was, the type of plant that was growing regularly in that area, or indigenous, and now as we continue to regrow that and then replant that within these communities, hopefully we can grow these. And here's something that I was very curious about. Indigenous communities across the country lost the right to their cultural food systems when the Indian Act was enacted in 1876. Did that all of a sudden mean that these groups were no longer allowed to just plant and manage traditional?
Well, I mean, if you think of terms of the a life cycle of a plant and where it is geographically, when that Indian Act happened and they were placed on reserve system, they weren't allowed to leave or access those plants.
Right.
So, and they would normally travel the land during a season, right?
Right.
And use the medicines as they were. That's right. But as soon as that came in and they were confined, well, then they had no access to those areas, right?
Yeah, fabulous. I'd like to read a little bit more about it, because now that we're starting to have that conversation. And, Devin, set the light off, set the tone off, the lights. Folks, if you can't see it, the light is flashing here, and you know what that means. It's the Indigenous Plant Conversation time. Lawrence, what do you got to talk with us about today?
Well, today I have a topic called Bullrushes, and I'm sure Devin's going to flash the image on the screen here. This plant is edible. They're eaten when freshly dug, the lower 4 inches of the stem next to the root. It is very tender and eaten raw. Since these stems are tall, straight, and very pliable, they are often flattened and woven, and they would make them into green baskets, dishes, and other crafts. The rushes were torn apart in small pieces, boiled, and they would treat coughs and fevers. It was also under our mattresses to keep it soft to sleep on, and doormats were used doormats were braided using bulrushes. So bulrushes are those, I don't know how you describe it, and I'm sure he's throwing it on, but they're sort of every 4 inches there's a connection, and you can actually pull them apart. And we used to use them as straws when we were kids and stuff like that. But we didn't realize that they're actual medicine too. So,
oh, that's funny. I do remember the idea of straws, and I do. Probably one of the first times I ever learned about it was, you go through a historic cabin and or such, and they show you this bed, and they would explain that was stuffed full of bulrushes. And at first it was hard to understand the context, but really anything that can be used as bedding probably was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's my medicine of the day, and I look forward to the next one.
Lawrence, yes, you know that I'll be throwing you under the bus to get one anyways. So a big shout out that I wanted to give was this weekend I had swung down to visit some family, and we walked through the Crossroads Market here in southern Alberta in the Calgary region. Beautiful little market, farmers market, but also has sort of a back area. And there was a store there called Mystical Métis that I hadn't ever come across before. Mm-hmm. And I think you had mentioned it once before, but I actually ended up buying a little sticker. You can see it's the Métis sash that looks like, if I hold it up this way, I think it looks like an upside down hippopotamus. But if I hold it right side up, it looks like a bear that's crawling. Yeah, so kind of fun. I wanted to, and in Samaria Cardinal.
Yeah.
And the staff that were working there said a lot of the materials, a lot of the available items that are just beautiful, mostly Métis. There was a lot of First Nation. There was just kind of a nice connection in there. But t-shirts, a lot of awareness, fabulous little store. So folks, if I can give a big shout out to the Mystical Métis, make sure you stop in the Crossroads Market and have a little peek through their store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've known Samaria for a little while now. She's a great, wonderful person, and nice to see her start a business in that market. And so when people go down, they'll see some Métis crafts.
Oh yeah, they had pants, they had clothes, they had bags, they had all sorts of the knickknacks, the kind of stuff like the lanyards. They had a plethora of items. And another big thing I wanted to bring up too was the authentically Indigenous craft market is coming to the Kirby Center Gym in 1133 7th Avenue Southwest in Calgary, Alberta on May 6th and 7th. So it's $5 or $8 for a weekend pass, and it's going to be showcase local Indigenous makers and artists who create homemade goods, food, art, jewelry, beadwork, and more. There will be a free surprise for moms who are in attendance. So for all you moms who are listening out there, you're going to want to make sure that you take your families down. I think that'd be, I have to imagine that if there isn't somebody down there painting faces, somebody send me an email and I'll come down.
Yeah,
now,
you
I've
want
never
a kiss
done it
face.
before.
You want a big Ace Frehley face or Gene Simmons.
Yeah, every kid is going to end up looking like Gene Simmons or some member of Kiss, because I probably only have black and white, and I've never done it before. So yeah, a rare thing for me is, though I go on stage a lot, I cannot tell you how many times I've ever worn makeup. And other than having some temporary tattoos on my arms, yeah, it's pretty rare for me. But Lawrence, hopefully one of these shows, before you come on the podcast when we're live in session, I will try to do your makeup.
Yes, do it.
Let's finish our conversation, Lawrence, with a little bit of shout out to the Blue Jays who have been winning. Fun to see them back hitting the ball again. I'm looking forward to another great baseball season, and I know these players are, having climbed out of all of the bubbles that they've had to play in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still with the pitching. Pitching has to be better, but the hitting is, really good. Yeah.
Well, and I think one of our number one pitchers, Ryu, has got a bit of a right forearm strain. As well, the Oilers have been winning. They helped secure the Flames getting a playoff spot, but then the Flames actually crushed the Coyotes the other night, 9-1.
Yeah.
You know, at the Flames, folks, if you've never been to a Flames game, every time the Flames score, they send off this flame that sort of you can feel through the whole Saddle Dome.
Yeah, and the train horn. I think it's...
Yeah.
Yeah. It scares Luke every time, like holding his ears, right? But yeah.
It's not just pocket dogs and malted milk, but when those flames go off, well, after the 9th time they set those flames off, I started to feel like I was getting a bit of a sunburn.
Yeah, it is. I firmly believe we need new arena. I'm one of those people, right? And
you're one of those?
Yeah. It's just every time I drive up to the Saddle Dome and just the way it looks, and it's just so 80s to me. And even when
I love the beauty of the shape of it. But folks, for all of you listening out there, if you are a part of the rebuild of the new arena and there's an opportunity, if you could cut the squeaky wheel in for just 1% of all the ticket revenues and maybe even just the hot dog sales, you know, we would have such great opportunity to build our podcast even further and further.
I don't know. I mean, I go to Edmonton and I go to the Oilers games at the new arena, and then you come to the Saddle Dome, you see the difference, definitely. But that's just me.
Well, yeah. And this podcast will not be going to watch Habs games. So, folks, we're going to close the show on that. So, from Leighton and Devin, from behind the scenes, and from all of our the folks who connect within our community, thank you for subscribing. Make sure you email us. Send us your questions. If you have any business relationships, I know there's a business mixer that's coming up. We talk about it weekly. I think it's coming up this Thursday. Make sure you reach out to our office. And you can always find us, folks, at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca, or you can email Lawrence at thesqueakywheel.ca, Ross at thesqueakywheel.ca, and make sure you look us up. If you can't figure out from there how to find us online, folks, try harder. But you can go to métis3.org, and all I can say is keep the wheel squeaking, folks, and we appreciate your time. The Squeaky Wheel is brought to you by the Squeaky Wheel Company, co-hosted by the President, Lawrence Gervais, MMA Region 3, and the Captain, Ross, Memphis, Pambrun. Our program is broadcast from Calgary, in Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, which is part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We also acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. You can always reach us for comment about our programming by email at tsw@thesqueakywheel.ca or find us on our website, www.squeakywheel.ca, and our socials. For our comments, it is our focus to recognize all of our First Nations and Indigenous friends, share a connection with Métis settlements, and listen to and show respect to our Métis brothers and sisters and families. Here at the Squeaky Wheel, we give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for her time she allows us to be here and share her bounty. From all of us at the Squeaky Wheel, Tansi.